It's
ML
again.
It's a man again. It's a man again. It's the zombie has been.
He may be a philological filibuster, but despite his passion for prevarication, this terminological inexactitudinarian still remains.
Smile with pride and joy, this is Henry's boy. Our Tuesdays still complain. When trouble's brewing, it's his doing. The man again.
Oh, gee, I'm cheesed off.
You asked it around, you touch it around my face. It's gone.
What are you doing? Come on.
That is not paid for by them. That is paid for by the people of Detroit.
You might be qualified, ML.
I'm not qualified for this job.
Let me tell you something. You want to go right now? Okay? You want to go right now?
Hey kids, it's your old pal ML Elric coming to you live on Give Green Day. No, that's not a reference to a proto-punk band from California. This is the day that you're encouraged to make a donation to Michigan State University scholarship funds. If you go to Facebook page Detroit Spartans, you can see a little video of me making a pitch to help the kids in East Lansing, or help send some kids to East Lansing. Please see what you can do to help create some more Spartans. And where would I be without my Wolverine pal, Mr. Marc Fell?
I mean, how come you never promoted Give Blue Day?
Did you really need? Is that rhetorical? No. We are
Which
happy.
I believe is the same day. I think it's going on now.
Oh,
as well.
yeah. No,
I'm not positive. I could look it up, but I'm not going to.
Yeah. So if you'd like to donate on Give Blue Day, we're raising money so that players can get their gun training classes. They can finish, their certification process. We are helping to raise money so they can get those permits and drive really fast. So yes, we are happy to help with that. So thank you, Mark. Thank you.
Glass houses. Okay.
Thank you for reminding me that there's a lot of great causes out there.
Rename Spartan Stadium to Glass House.
We call it the tunnel.
Exactly.
Are you ready to enter the tunnel? I don't think so. Since we already
assaulted, sure.
We almost clotheslined poor Devin Bush to death, but he seemed to have recovered all right. So
really, that's where you want to start?
Well, I was just trying to raise some money for kids, and then you tried to get me.
I'm just reminding people that it's not just one universe. I'm sure there's Give Green for Wayne State too.
And Eastern Michigan, my favorite college in Washtenaw County, green and white. How can you go wrong? Chris Creighton doing a great job. Amani Bates bringing that basketball program back. And
the basketball program was not that good this year. Just saying.
Yeah.
He was great.
I'm reaching, man.
I know.
Oh, and actually, he was reaching too. What is it about athletes in Washtenaw County packing like that? And this Jay Morant thing? What the?
John Morant? Yeah.
Jay, whatever. I call him Jay.
It's funny you bring it up. I was just reading today that John Morant is entering some kind of treatment center. And I'm like, for what? For the gun? For the assault? For the titty bar? I don't know.
It sounds like
great player, though. I love watching him play basketball.
Yeah, I think a kick in the ass is the only treatment he really needs. But that's fine. Or maybe he can watch some Plaxico Burress videos. How not to pack when you're at the club.
It's funny you said Plaxico actually has made comment on that and said he wants to talk to John Morant to explain, don't do that because of what happened to him shooting himself in the leg.
Of course, Plaxico, one of the great Wolverine wide receivers. No, I know he's a Spartan. Okay, I'm giving you that one.
Glass House.
I'm giving you that one. Okay.
Glass House Stadium.
Yeah. Well, at least we had Charles Rogers, model citizen. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, shit. Okay.
Oh, rest in peace.
Okay, never mind.
Or not.
We're going to move on.
What's going on? We
are hoping to be joined later on today by Shawn Windsor, who is taking a bit of a personal day, but wants to join us. So we have his chair waiting for him. It's a living tribute to Shawn, and we expect to get as much out of the first half hour of the show from that chair as we normally do when it's occupied. In fact, we may be talking a little bit about that during the feedback section at the end of our show.
Fantastic feedback today. That's a tease.
It's great stuff. Great stuff. And if you are watching us, if you're not watching us, you should be. Check us out on YouTube. Please subscribe to our Soul of Detroit channel. If you subscribe and hit the bell, you'll get an alert when we go live, which is always a bit of a mystery because our guests come and go. And today we have a fantastic guest. We've been teasing him for weeks. We finally had Elliott Hall, counselor to mayors, ambassadors, CEOs, And the man who protected the young women, some said they were prostitutes, we're not here to judge, who were eyewitnesses to a massacre at the Algiers Motel in 1967 that was one of the more infamous incidents during the 1967 riot, civil disturbance, insurrection. Call it what you will. Elliott joined us this morning for a fantastic interview, sharing some insights on Coleman Young, on Kwame Kilpatrick, and everyone in between. So we are grateful to have Elliott with us. And I'll be talking a little bit about my column, giving some free advice to the other white Mike in Detroit politics, Mayor Duggan, and his state of the city, and a big omission he made. Big omission that should probably have all of us very, very worried. But this is all brought to you by Luke Nowacki and Pinnacle Wealth Strategies, who will help you prepare for a secure financial future, which is really important now, especially when you're seeing the banks and you're saying,
Yeah,
that's a little scary. And David Hall of Hall Financial, who will help you get some money out of your house, help you get a house, help you get financing. They do it super fast, and they have more 5-star reviews than we do by a damn sight. So that tells you the quality that you get from Hall Financial. Al Lengel's joining us on Facebook. He says, you guys have a great show, and he should know. He is the impresario of Deadline Detroit, and they do a weekly podcast. Deadline Detroit, check it out. It's a great show. Caju Cafe, I want to tell you a little bit about where you can find me on Friday. That's St. Patrick's Day. I will be at the Caju, officially working from 3 to 4:30, kind of taking our show on the road. But the Caju will open early on Friday at 11 a.m. They're going to be having bangers and mash, Guinness Irish stew, corned beef and cabbage, Guinness on tap, music all day except for 3 to 4:30 when I'm on stage, although some people find...
Yeah, please don't sing.
They find my voice mellifluous. I think that's how you say it. And to find out more about what's going on at the Caju, go to cajucafe.com. Please join me on St. Patrick's Day. But any time is a great time to hit the Caju Cafe.
Marc, are you going to watch your Spartans play there? Noon, right? Isn't it noon on Friday?
Yeah, they're at noon. No, I'll be teaching at Michigan State, so we may have it on in the background. So I'm going to wrap up my class and then beat feet for the East Side. But I'm hoping they get out of that first round against USC. That's
no problem. No problem.
Well, it depends on which Spartan team shows up. And what's with the Shawn Windsor Curse, by the way? I think I read that Michigan State and U of M were shaping up. They both look great. They could make a long tourney run.
That was ringing in my ears watching the Big Ten tournament. I'm like, whoa, Shawn was way off on this one.
Oh, and
that's what's great about sports, right? You can make this bodacious hot take, and it just, boom, blows up in your face.
Months ago, he wrote, Tom Izzo's really learning he can trust A.J. Hoggard. It's a very special relationship. And I sent him a text and said, you know what? I believe it too. Very next game, he misses 2 crucial free throws, and they lose to Purdue at home in a game they could have stolen. Like, the Windsor Curse is real.
It's alive and well, yeah.
It is. That's why I'm glad that he is so negative towards me in this show, because it tells me that wonderful, great things are ahead. But you should be worried about your calves, because he's a big fan of that particular piece of your anatomy. You may be facing some sort of clotting or some other catastrophe. So I hope you'll wear some of those socks that they give you.
Compression socks, yeah,
sure. Get some of those.
I'll get the Shawn Windsor brand compression socks.
Yes, please. Take care of yourself, Marc. We're nowhere without you, or with Joe, who is about to tee up an interview that we recorded just an hour or so ago with Elliott Hall, talking about his amazing career. Very pleased to have a special guest with us, a gentleman we've been waiting to talk to for a while. He's busy because he's been in the middle of everything big that's been happening for the last 50 years or more here in Detroit. And that's Elliott Hall, who is not only an outstanding attorney, but he has been an advisor to some of the biggest names in Detroit history, from Coleman Young to Kwame Kilpatrick to, I don't know, who are you representing these days, Elliott?
Well, listen, things are quieting down now a bit after 57 years of practicing, man. In fact, I plan to shut it all down by June 1st of this year. My wife thinks I ought to come home and stay for a bit, But I started practicing right after in 1966 here in Detroit, and joined Allen early in 67, 4 months before the famous 1967 riots.
Well, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to talk to you, because we were looking back at the infamous Algiers Motel. I'm going to call it an incident, but I think massacre is probably more accurate. For folks who aren't familiar with this piece of Detroit history, it's one of the bleakest chapters in our history. This was where some young men were partying at one of the few black-owned hotels in Detroit. The Dramatics, you may have heard their music, were coming there after a show at the Fox. It was canceled because of the insurrection in the streets. And Detroit police raided the motel, started hassling the young men who were there, and a couple of young women, a couple of young white women who I've heard described as prostitutes in the movie version of this, Detroit, which came out a few years ago. I think their presence there was a little more ambiguous. But Elliott Hall was one of the folks who tried to help get to the bottom of the matter, help get the truth of the matter, because after 3 people were found dead, after many, many tries, the police were brought to court, and in the end, I think were not convicted of any crimes. Have I got that right, Elliott?
That's right. The case was there was a change of venue, and the police officers involved. The case was moved out of Detroit to a city in Upper Michigan. I've forgotten the name of the city, but it was way out of Detroit.
Mason, Michigan, I believe.
Yeah, Mason. You're right. Mason, Michigan. And the jury up there found the officers not guilty.
Probably not surprising with an all-white rural jury in 1967. And I believe one of the other trials was held in Flint, and I think that was also an all-white jury, and that may have been a federal case, but as I recall, it ended in acquittals as well.
Yep. Those were not good times in a very charged racial atmosphere.
So there were books written about this, and I think one of the prouder moments in the Detroit Free Press's history is they went and talked to witnesses at the motel, and they told a very different story than what police had been saying. In fact, at the time, police weren't even reporting that there were dead bodies in the motel. It was a terrible, shocking incident. And if you watch the movie, which is an outstanding movie, I watched and this is a movie. This is a Hollywood production. And after watching the movie, I was taken aback by the dramatic representation of it. It was so stark, so bleak, and it gave you a real sense that, people talk about Detroit in the good old days and this. Well, let's get something straight. It's probably never been a bad time to be a white person in Detroit, but for a lot of people, the good old days in Detroit were not that great. And if you look like Elliott and not like me, the good old days were not very good at all.
Well, let me explain it this way, ML. Yes, when I was in high school, I graduated from Chadsey High School in Detroit in 1956, at a time when the city was really racially segregated. There were black neighborhoods and there were white neighborhoods. But many of the black neighborhoods were self-contained. And I have to admit, in my black neighborhood on the west side of Detroit, we sort of made our own way. And as a result, we had a very happy childhood, but we knew the restrictions of where we could go as black folks. We knew there were certain neighborhoods we couldn't even travel through. We knew that there were certain restaurants that we couldn't attend. And so we knew the restrictions. So we kind of had an enjoyed life within the restrictions. But we knew that the barriers were there, and there were elements within the community like NAACP and the Urban League who tried to shut those barriers down. And of course, eventually they were shut down, slowly going into the 1960s. But despite the discrimination, you have to understand there's one thing. We tried to make life enjoyable and go to school, get educated, and try to make an impact in society.
When did you, you must have experienced racism directly. Like, when did it hit you at that age? Because I had read that you were delivering papers for the Detroit News and you were going to work your way up there until they just said, we don't hire colored people.
Colored
I think
people.
was yeah.
Let me tell you, Mark. This is very, very interesting because I became a lawyer because the Detroit News turned me down. I started my paper out when I was 13. And then they made me station captain at the age of 16, which meant I had 10 other news carriers that worked in the neighborhood. I distributed papers to them every day. And on Saturday morning was collection day. I would collect their weekly money and then turn it into my district manager, who came Saturday afternoon to collect all the money. But while working as a paper boy and station captain, in 1954 March, I won a trip to New York City because of new customers that I were able to obtain. In December of 1954, I won a trip to Bermuda and won another trip to Bermuda in December of 1955 for getting new. So I was a fairly decent paper boy, and I thought I deserved getting a job at the Detroit News right out of high school, starting off as a jumper on the truck, which meant that's when they had newsstands throughout the city. And a jumper on the side of the truck would put the papers from the truck bed over into the newsstand. And we also, at the end of the week, would, of course, collect the money, the nickel. At that time, the paper was 5 cents.
Wow.
Yeah. So we would collect the money from the box. But my station manager, a month before graduation from high school, told me that, Elliott, I know we promised you this job, but the union will not let us hire you because you're a colored. And that shocked the hell out of me because, I've been planning to work for the news. So the only reason I ended up going to college is because my best friend in high school at that time was going to Michigan. He was a college prep guy, and I was from Chadsey High School, and I was in a trade program. But I always thought I'd work for the news. So I tried college after being turned down, and I started Eastern Michigan. Left Eastern Michigan, came down to Wayne, and that's where I spent 6 years on the Wayne State campus, finishing undergrad and law school. So I ended up becoming a lawyer because I was turned down because I was colored back in 1956. So life turned out pretty good anyway.
Yeah, I would say that you took that setback and you turned it into a victory, which speaks a lot to the man that you are. And this Algiers Motel incident, as I understand it, one of your jobs was to protect the witnesses. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got involved in this case?
Yes, it was very interesting, ML. And I was in the office. I just started practicing. I was in the office with a well-known lawyer in Detroit at that time, Samuel Allen Early, who represented the Jackalonis and a few other well-known defendants. Allen Early was the best mentor that I could have. He's a black man who graduated from the Yale Law School in 1942 at the age of 20. He could not take the New York bar for 6 months because you had to be 21 to take the New York bar. While at Yale, he was on the Yale Law Journal. Brilliant guy, couldn't find a job in a law office. They finally hired him in the New York prosecutor's office. He came to Detroit around 1952, worked as a chief assistant prosecutor. He wasn't chief, he was just an assistant prosecutor in that office. And then I was fortunate to get with him in 1967. Well, Allen had a client by the name of Jimmy Gonzalez. Jimmy Gonzalez, ML, hung out at the Greyhound bus station in downtown Detroit back in the time when the bus station was near the city-county building. Jimmy Gonzalez hung out at that bus station because wayward girls who had run away from home would always come through that Greyhound bus station. So these two white girls that ended up at the Algiers Motel was courted by Jimmy. And Jimmy was going to turn them into prostitutes. And he was a client of Allen Early's. So these girls ended up at the Algiers Motel and was witness to the treatment by the police officers and the killings by the police officers. But of course, police officers they castigated the girls for being, of course, in this motel with all these black guys. And after the shootings was all over with, they found their way back to Jimmy Gonzalez, and Jimmy Gonzalez brought both of the girls by Alan Early's office the Saturday after the riot started. And they had told their story to Jimmy, and Jimmy then brought them to Alan. Alan then called John Conyers, and then we got the Justice Department involved. So I was kind of babysitting the girls on Alan's boat. He had a boat in the harbor right next to the Jeffersonian Hotel, down on the east side of Detroit. So I was babysitting these girls until the Justice Department was able to get to them and question them. So that was my little involvement with that. And about 6 or 7 months after that happened, ML, John Hershey, the famous author, came to Detroit and interviewed a number of people. And he wrote this famous book, The Algiers Motel Incident. And he questioned me about my role in that incident.
And what were these women like? Were they fearful for their life? Were they outraged by what they witnessed?
Yeah, they were thankful, of course, that they were, of course, white and not armed, but they were outraged by the treatment of these black guys they were hanging around with. And that was what turned the police on. I mean, it was like these 2 white girls at the Algiers Motel with these 6 black men. It was like throwing gasoline on a fire. It was just incendiary for these white Detroit police officers to see this situation. And that's why the black guys got caught so much hell. But of course, after the incident was over, they didn't harm the white girls at all. They just harassed them verbally. And as a result, that's how this whole thing was uncovered by these 2 girls.
Elliott, where were you? Because you came into after the fact, right? Where were you while the rising and the rebellion, the riots were going on?
Oh my goodness! I was practicing law. I was in the office with Alan Early in the First National Building, 21st floor. And when the riot started, I was practicing criminal law in the old Recorder's Court. And don't forget, they had over 8,000 people arrested that week. And that was a very hectic week. I had a pass. The court was open 24 hours. All the judges were arraigning all the defendants coming in, and there was a $10,000 surety bond placed on every defendant that was arrested and arraigned. And they ran out of space to put the defendants. They had them housed out in Belle Isle in the bus in the beach house. They also had them on buses because they ran out of jail space. And Goldfarb, the bonding guy, on Beaubien, right across Kitty Corner across the street from 1300 Beaubien. I've teased many a time with the Goldfarbs that they made more money that week from bond than they could spend for the rest of their life. Because you had to you couldn't just put up 10%.
Yeah,
you had to put up the full 10,000 or your deed to your house at that time. And then after the riots were over, Judge Damasio, judge over in the Recorder's Court, instituted the practice of putting up 10% of cash for a bond rather than the surety bond. But yeah, I was practicing that week, and I had a 24-hour pass. I could get through all the police lines without any problem. I'll never forget one incident. I lived out in Northwest Detroit at the time, and I had just visited a client at the Verner Precinct. I remember jumping on the expressway in downtown Detroit and driving to 6 Mile Road on the expressway. Gentlemen, I did not pass one car coming or going on the expressway for 10 miles. The city was completely shut down. And I got a little fearful, not knowing. So I was zigzagging all the way home on the expressway because I didn't want to get pot-shotted, because the night before, someone was shot at the Harlan Motel by a sniper. While the guy was standing in the window of the hotel, he was killed when the Harlan Motel was in the area of the Boulevard and the Lodge Freeway. So yeah, I was working as a lawyer during that week, and that's when I Alan's office, and that's when the girls came in on that Saturday. And I started my babysitting project on that Saturday right after the riot.
And then you fast forward a few years, you start working for the Black Panthers, and there was an incident I was reading about where it was kind of a standoff, and you were actually called to the house to maybe peacefully kind of resolve the situation. I have to believe that the Algiers was in your mind while you were at that house.
Oh, no question about it. Of course, I was representing the Black Panther Party at the time, and I was accompanied on that visit by my partner, Dennis Archer, at the time. Dennis and I were practicing law together, and there was a reporter from the Michigan Chronicle, the African-American newspaper at the time. I've forgotten her name, but at any rate, we were called to the house, and we were permitted entry into the house, and I spoke to all there were 16 of them in the house at the time. And we spoke to them about surrendering because a police officer, a shot from that house killed a police officer. Last name was Smith. So they barricaded themselves inside of the house. The house was surrounded by the Detroit Police Department, and they were going to shoot it out with the police. We talked them out of doing that, and we were able to get 13 of the 16 out of the house and to safety. 3 of the youngsters, all male, decided they wanted to shoot it out with the police and die when the shootout. But I have to give the Detroit police a great deal of credit at that time. They tear gassed the house, they disabled the 3 remaining males, and they came out unharmed. So that was a trial. We had a trial with all 16 of them, Ernest Goodman and myself. We were the lead lawyers in that trial. That happened, and the trial, in fact, took place like 69, 70, as I recall. Ernest Goodman was another fine lawyer in this town. He's gone on.
As I recall, not that I was out on the streets in the early 70s, but that was at a time when Detroit police had Thompson submachine guns, where if you've ever seen any of the Untouchable movies, that's a pretty heavy-duty piece of weaponry, and it's my understanding that there might not have been much hesitation to empty one of those drums of ammo into a house like that. So that's something else to get everybody out alive, because I don't know if that was always the first choice of the first responders.
Well, when I walked out of that house with Dennis Archer and this other, Nadine Brown was the name of the
reporter?
Reporter for the Michigan Chronicle at that time, Nadine Brown. I was certain that those 3 young men were going to get killed. They had no chance of surviving a shootout with the Detroit police with the house around. Plus, they had a small tank outside, too. But these youngsters were so vigilant and avid Black Panther members that they thought life wasn't worth living. But they got them out without any harm. By the way, those 3 were the last ones that came out, were the only ones convicted at the trial and they went to jail for a short period of time. But one of them got out. His name was Iron de Saucer. I understand he was able to get his conviction expunged. The young man went to medical school and became a doctor.
Wow. Huh. Wow.
Yeah. You have to understand that these youngsters were not criminals. They were not robbers. These were Black Panthers who did not believe in the segregated system that existed at that time in the United States, and that Black folks were being unfairly treated. And therefore, they had this philosophy, of course, we're not Martin Luther King peaceful demonstrators. We want to shoot it out with the police. So they were the aggressive, violent part of the movement back in those days. But very bright youngsters.
Yeah. In looking at the Algiers Motel incident, one of the folks who was tried in the killings was a Black security guard. If you've watched the movie, it was John Boyega. If you're a Star Wars fan, you probably remember him from those. But his life did not turn out as well. He was acquitted, but it seemed like he was ostracized by both communities and spent the rest of his life working as a security guard. I thought that was really unfortunate because my understanding is he was one of the folks who kept things from getting really out of hand. And, it feels to me like he was collateral damage in all of that. And the officers kind of went on with their lives, just not as police officers anymore, but it didn't seem like they suffered very gravely for the havoc that they wrought.
Yeah, well, listen, there were not many winners during that bad period in Detroit's history, the 67 riots. It started the precipitous downfall of Detroit, leading to today, where we have 1/3 ML, 1/3 of the population we had when I graduated from high school in 1956. Population of Detroit was 1.8 million when I graduated. It is now, I guess, creeping up close to 700,000, but we've lost roughly almost 2/3 of the population while maintaining the same space, you know. That's why this city in many areas looks so desolated, you know. I don't know if we'll ever come back to the old days, but we lived in a very vibrant city in the 50s and the early 60s.
Yeah, it's shocking to think that at one time we were the 5th largest city in the country, that we were bidding for the Olympics throughout the 60s, that Detroit actually was considered a front runner to get the Olympics.
You're right.
It was that dynamic a city. Mayor Kavanaugh was considered this bright young JFK protege, sort of the new mayor, the enlightened white leader of a diverse city. His career kind of went sideways, and the city, you know, I mean, regardless of what you think of it today, as Elliott said, there are neighborhoods that were very vibrant then that no longer exist. And there's some neighborhoods that are struggling to recover still. And while we are having people move back to the city and move into our neighborhoods, which we're grateful. I have a lot of new neighbors and they're wonderful, but we seem to see people moving up, like vertically, like they want to live downtown in a high rise as opposed to having a front yard, a backyard, and well, I guess we don't get the milkman anymore, and nobody's delivering the damn newspaper anymore. I think Elliott and I may be the 2 last Detroit news carriers around, but I never got to Bermuda, by the way.
You weren't as good.
No, well, I mean, how could I be as good as Elliott? But I think the best thing I ever got was a baseball bat. That was one of the prizes. But and then someone stole it from my car.
I have to tell you this story about my Detroit news route. There were 2 white kids, 2 white boys who went to Catholic Central, Bill and Bob Sharp. They joined me on my first Bermuda trip and also on the second Bermuda trip. My second encounter with discrimination was when I got to Bermuda. I could not stay in the hotel where all the white carriers stayed. I had to stay in the black hotel in Bermuda. And I had met Bill and Bob Sharp on the plane. They wondered what happened to me. So they came over, they found out where I was staying, came over to the hotel, stayed with us for a while, and also went to the beach with us later that day. We were permitted, there was another black guy with me, was another carrier from the east side, and they permitted us to come to the white hotel called the Bermudiana during the day for social activities. We just could not stay there at night. We had to go back to the black hotel. I stayed in those. Bill and Bob Sharp became very close friends of mine. They were so upset with how I was being treated and the other guy was being treated. And I stayed in touch with both Bill and Bob Sharp for several years. They both became Catholic priests.
Oh, wow.
But I was never, and just in recent years, I've been trying to trace them down, and I have not been able to find hide nor hair of them. These are guys that just came and made a very great situation out of a dire thing in Bermuda when I was far away from home. And at the time, I was 16, 17 years old. But these were great guys. And I've tried to find them and haven't been able to do it.
Were they in the Detroit Archdiocese?
Yes, they went to Catholic Central
in
Detroit at the time. Yeah. Well, before they moved. Bill and Bob, they were brothers, and they graduated from high school the same year I did from Catholic Central back in 1956. Have not been able to run them down.
Well, I'll do a little looking on that, because I think we should be able to get a lead on them, see where they are these days. When I want to go back to your work with these two women, did you keep in touch with them after all the legal stuff concluded? Because I saw that one of the women was a consultant on the movie, so she's still around.
She was. I did not stay in touch with them. They kind of, after my incident with them and keeping them, they kind of went off the map. And I didn't meet one of them until they did the movie. I met them down at the now Westin Hotel before the movie was released. But I had not seen her in 45, 50 years, at the time. But no, I did not stay in touch with them.
Okay, and after the legal proceedings concluded, were you involved with any of the witnesses, any of the defense? I mean, was this just another case, and you moved on to many others, or?
No, I wasn't involved any further in the case. I just continued my practice of criminal law in the city, and then but I got involved, as you know, politically. Firstly, when Richard Austin ran for mayor against Roman Gribbs in 1968, I was involved in Richard Austin's campaign. He lost to Roman Gribbs. Mayor Gribbs, only served one term. That's when Coleman and John Nichols ran against one another, and I became close with Coleman, as you know, and ended up being his first corporation counsel back in 1974. But I stayed involved with the practice, but I also stayed involved with the community, because I was elected president of the NAACP back in 1972 before Coleman took office. So I was always had my foot in the law, but I also had my foot in the community too.
Well, tell us a little bit what it was like to work with Mayor Young in those days, because he's become such a legend that it's almost a myth, but you're someone who worked side by side with him and knew him before he became an icon.
Yeah. Well, listen, take these facts into consideration. I met Coleman when he was a state senator. Coleman Young had a high school education. But had just was just brilliant, smart man. So smart that his peers in the Senate, all of these white senators from around the state of Michigan, elect him majority leader of the Senate at the time before he ran for mayor. So when he ran for mayor, it was a tough race between he and John Nichols, but of course he won, and he brought his intellect from a high school education to dealing with all of the difficult issues within the city. I found that great. I remember when he started the practice, every city department would have a director and an assistant director. One had to be black, the other had to be white. So he diversified the city government and also made Philip Tanyan the police chief, a white police chief. People in the black community would say, you should appoint a black police chief. He did not. He wanted to make sure that the residents in the city of Detroit, the white residents particularly, who were leaving the city in droves, they wanted to at least indicate that the police department would be headed by a white police chief. So I knew Phil Tanyan, and I only stayed in the corporation counsel's office a little over a year. I went back to the practice of law, but Coleman assigned several cases to me involving the integration of the police department and the fire department. We wanted to get more African-American police officers above the patrolman rank and all the way up through inspector and commander. So we dealt with those cases and were able to further integrate the police department. And of course, as you know, ML, one of Coleman's first moves was to get rid of stress, that division of the Detroit Police Department that was terrorizing the black community and causing so many problems. There are a lot of shootings and deaths attributed to that unit, and Coleman got rid of it. and was able to sort of stabilize the crime situation in the city of Detroit. But Coleman was a very fair man, but strong, but a very strong leader. I mean, you know, he wasn't afraid to confront anybody, and most folks respected him, and some even feared him. If he fired somebody because they weren't doing their job in city government, he never completely fired them from the city. If they were not performing in one department, he would relieve them of duties in that department and give them a job in another part of the city. He understood everybody had to feed a family. So he was not that kind of person that would fire somebody and just put them out in the street. And a few people know that about Coleman, that he really looked after the folks that worked for him.
Well, I remember hearing when Kwame Kilpatrick was getting rid of people that folks, maybe it was Bob Berg and some others who traced their roots back to the Young administration, said when Coleman, well, there are two things. He said, once you're appointed, it's just a matter of time before you're disappointed. So if you got a political position, it was temporary. But the other thing was, yes, if he removed someone, he found a soft landing, or he put them somewhere. He didn't turn them out. And one of the things that I think some folks would call them old heads, some people would call them wise men, said that Kilpatrick got wrong is he was a little more vindictive. If he got rid of you, you were gone. And so in that case, you ended up making an enemy. And in the case of Gary Brown, whose whistleblower lawsuit, along with Harold Nelthrop, really did, and Walt Harris, really did bring about the end of the Kilpatrick administration, was Gary Brown was willing to stay and move to a different position. And instead they just said, no, we got to get rid of you. And that was, if you trace back Kwame Kilpatrick's probably biggest fatal error, it was getting rid of somebody instead of following the Coleman Young playbook and saying, you know what, we're going to move you from a place we don't think you're performing to a place where you can run out the clock, or you can, qualify for your pension at a level that you think is fair. And you worked with Mayor Kilpatrick at some point in there. What parallels and differences would you draw between Mayor Young and Mayor Kilpatrick?
Well, I'm first going to start with the fact that Coleman Young had a high school education. Kwame Kilpatrick had a law degree and an undergrad degree, 2 degrees. One of the things that Kwame didn't realize is the fact that he was not untouchable and he was not all powerful. When he left the Michigan legislature and became mayor, he was making $70,000 a year. Kwame then becomes the mayor. He inherits a budget of over $3 billion, a mansion on the river. He doubles his salary, but still not satisfied. He ends up under the scrutiny of the FBI almost immediately. He and his father. His mother was always a very honest person. I worked with his mother when I was running the Ford Motor Company office years and years later. She was a congressperson, and she was always straight as an arrow. That was not known clearly by everyone regarding Kwame and Kwame's father. And he listened to his dad quite a bit. The most unfortunate situation was that I heard from the FBI that, for most of the things that Kwame was doing, they could obtain by wiretap. They never had to leave the FBI office. All they had to do was get the official warrant from the court to have their phones tapped. And a lot of the ongoing criminal enterprise was being discussed over the phone. It was just unfortunate that Kwame never realized that his activities that were illegal, and he should have known they were illegal because he's a lawyer, would come under scrutiny, but he thought that he was untouchable. And that was unfortunate. Now, I never worked for Kwame, but I did have a discussion with him telling him that maybe he should hire the same personal lawyer that Coleman had for 20 years. My colleague here at the office, Meyer Morgenroth. Morgenroth represented Kevorkian after Feigerger, and Mike also represented the former executive vice president of General Motors, who built the wing, the car with the winged doors.
John DeLorean.
Yep.
DeLorean, yeah, he represented DeLorean. And I tried to get Kwame to hire Mike or Morgenroth to sort of guide him through the maze of being a mayor, because being a mayor, you're approached with a lot of deals all the time. And one thing Coleman never did, someone tried to give him an envelope, or so he'd be out at a fundraiser or at some event and try to give them something. He never took it. He said, give it to my police officer over here. He never wanted. He was very scrupulous in making sure that he handled himself appropriately. And of course, Mike Morgenroth played a big role in terms of making sure he was protected. And as a result, as you know, after 20 years in office, Coleman Young was never indicted for anything. He was under suspicion for this and that, but all of it came to nothing, because he had good counsel in Mike Morgenroth. And Kwame didn't do that. He ends up now, unfortunate demise. I understand he wants to be a preacher at this point, where he could have been one. He may have had the opportunity, if he had played it straight. He had the smarts to be governor, In my view, I thought he was very good on his feet. He was a very bright guy. But unfortunately, he took a different path.
I always thought that one of the big differences between Kilpatrick and Young, and I think there were a lot of differences, but it seemed to me that Coleman Young had to fight and claw for everything he had, and he had to play defense for a long time, whereas Kwame Kilpatrick started from a pretty privileged place and didn't quite understand that there was a struggle, and I often remember him saying that it's time for us to put, the struggles of the past behind us. And I thought that's pretty easy for someone to say if they haven't been through them. Whereas Coleman Young, boy, you want to talk about somebody who busted through barriers and overcame hurdles. It had to be Coleman Young.
Oh yeah, no question about it. He was a very unusual man, and I was privileged to be able to spend some time with him over a number of years. I'll never forget because my plan, as you may know, was to succeed Coleman as mayor. I wanted to run for that office when he gave up. But my appointment as a Ford vice president sort of put that all to the side, because in January 1987, I got a call from the general counsel of Ford to be the first black vice president. And I couldn't turn that down, because my dad worked at Ford for 42 years in the foundry. So here, due to education and progress, here I become a vice president of the company, where my daddy worked down in a dirty, hot, dingy foundry.
Elliott.
And as a result, my desire to become mayor was put aside, and my dear former partner and friend, Dennis Archer, took that helm.
That Ford job is really interesting because you go to D.C., and I was reading a little bit about that, working with the separation from South Africa. And the only thing I can think of is you must have met a lot of pretty famous dignitaries and possibly presidents. Did you meet presidents doing that job?
Oh my goodness. Listen, when I went, I was almost like the CEO of Ford in Washington, D.C. I was the only company officer in Washington, D.C., and I arrived there in 1987 when Ronald Reagan was the president.
Mm-hmm.
So, being the fifth largest corporation in the world at that time, I was in and out of the Reagan White House all the time, dealing with domestic policy issues, and also requesting certain favors for the auto industry, whether it was on a tax issue, on a fuel economy issue, on an environmental issue. Was there. And then when he left office, I was in and out of the George H.W. Bush White House all the time on the same issues, and also became very close to the Clinton White House. So during the 11 years that I ran the Ford office in D.C., I was not only up on the Hill meeting with senators, but I was, of course, very good friends with my counterparts at Chrysler and GM. And on many occasions, Chrysler, Ford, GM, we would lobby and issue together. We would go and visit a representative's office or a senator's office and try to fight for certain legislation to be passed or for certain things to be stopped. When we walked into a senator's office, we walked in with the following power, gentlemen. We had plants in 19 states. The auto industry were the largest consumer of steel, rubber, carpeting, glass, and semiconductors. We were the leading in 5 major industries. So we walked into these senators' office, and of course, by lobbying together, we were not violating any antitrust provisions by lobbying as an industry. But of course, we couldn't fix prices, but we could lobby and issue together. So those were great times. The most important thing to me, other than the domestic issues, was Ford had plants and offices all over the world. So I became good friends with the British ambassador, the Italian ambassador, the Australian ambassador, at least 7 or 8 major countries in the world. So we had quite a time. That experience in Washington, D.C.
Well, Elliott, I love the idea of Mayor Hall. I think that would have been a very, very exciting era for Detroit. But of course, your friend and colleague Dennis Archer did a fantastic job as mayor, inherited a city that was facing some serious challenges, got us back on our feet. A lot of people don't understand that he also dealt with an economic downturn and got the city squared away. I often think that if Mayor Kilpatrick had turned to Mayor Archer for his good counsel, we would have avoided our bankruptcy, because I think when Mayor Archer took office, as Mayor Young faced at some point the prospect of not being able to have revenues meet expenses, they took some strong medicine and got the city back on good financial footing. But I'm very sorry to hear you retiring, but I know you're not going away, because even when you were working for Ford, you were someone that people who made decisions in Detroit turned to make sure they were making good decisions for Detroit. So we really appreciate you making the time for us this morning. And when you do retire, if you're thinking you have some time to look into a memoir, maybe we should reconnect, because I would love to hear some of those stories and share them with people.
Oh boy! Well, that's my plan, ML. I tend to focus on memoir when I retire, lay out, because I think I have a few stories to tell.
Yeah. Well, I think you have a few volumes of stories to tell. Yeah. So we appreciate you sharing some of them with us today. But when you sit down, if you're looking for a collaborator, let me know. I would love to help you in any way I can. Well, thank you so much, ML. I've enjoyed this. It's conjured up some memories that I thought were lost in the recesses of my mind, but it's been good. That mind is like a steel trap. Yeah. So there's more stories coming, and we really appreciate it. Elliott Hall, counselor to, I won't say kings, but I'll say to mayors, to CEOs, to ambassadors, and a man who knows his way around the White House as well as the Capitol. We really appreciate you taking some time this morning with us on the Soul of Detroit. Thank you so much, ML. Appreciate it. And Mark, too. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hall.
All right.
Pretty amazing stuff. A man who has not just been an eyewitness to history, but played a role in some pretty spectacular moments in Detroit history, both heartbreaking and inspiring. And man, I love his candor on Kwame Kilpatrick. Yeah, there aren't a lot of people who had the mayor's ear who are willing to speak so forthrightly.
In a comparison between their upbringings, between him and Coleman.
Oh yeah, and I've said this many times that Kwame Kilpatrick reminded me a lot of some of the folks I grew up with in Grosse Pointe, whose parents were very successful, very connected. Everything seemed like it was teed up for them. And the difference is Kilpatrick, kind of pretended that he came from nothing, which wasn't the truth. Now, Dennis Archer, on the other hand, who a lot of people thought of as the bougie mayor, did come from nothing. He was the son of a one-armed handyman in Cassopolis, Michigan. And from the poor side of Cassopolis, which you may not have heard of in the same breath as Beverly Hills, it was not a privileged community. So, just interesting. And you don't really think that much about Dennis Archer as a young lawyer, but there he was with Elliott Hall trying to get the Black Panthers to give up peacefully. I mean, yeah. I really would love to sit down with Elliott and just have a blank notebook and say, let's fill this, because you'd be throwing out amazing stories just to have enough, just so that the book doesn't weigh 1,000 pounds.
Well, and we have to talk about another mayor coming up, too, when we dive into your column. And I think Shawn might be with us. Shawn, grunt or make a noise if you're there.
I'm here.
There's that sunshine. But first, I need to tell everybody about Hall Financial and the Buy Smart program. Housing inventory, it's on the rise, and you can get ahead of the competition before the busy spring and summer home buying season, before that really arrives and kicks in high gear. It's easier than ever right now to get into your new home with Hall Financial's exclusive Buy Smart program, giving you up to $2,500 towards your down payment. Get pre-approved the same day with most credible pre-approval in the industry. That's Hall Financial's 5-star certified pre-approval. They can even connect you with a top realtor. They have a huge network of realtors. So whether you're looking to purchase a new home or refinance your current home, call Hall Financial first, 866-CALL-HALL, or chat with them online at callhallfirst.com. And with all that money that you're going to save with them, make it work for you. Give Luke Nowacki a call. He's got a whole team at Pinnacle Wealth Strategies. They can help plan for all your future financial goals, and even the goals you have today. Give Luke a call, 248-663-4748. He's going to give you a complimentary consultation. You got to see where your money's at. You got to see where it's going. And even if you want to ask him about all these bank failures and what you're supposed to do with your money right now, if you're freaking out about that, give Luke in Pinnacle Wealth Strategies a call, 248-663-4748.
Because when you call Luke, he'll make it all about you, sweetheart.
Securities and investment advisory services offered through Royal Alliance Associates Inc. Member FINRAS.PC. Royal Alliance Associates Inc. is separately owned, and other entities and/or marketing names, products, or services referenced here are independent of Royal Alliance Associates Inc.
Oh man, the geeks have inherited the earth.
Did I do that?
What a dork.
Does him wanting to play with us again mean that he's turning into a geek, or we're turning into cool guys?
So I'm going to keep this short because we've had these folks as our Geek of the Week before. But Meghan and Harry, who don't want to be part of the royal family, just announced that they're going to refer to their kids as Prince and Princess. So if you want out, get out.
Amen.
If you don't. But quit trying to cash in from pulling back at the same time you're diving in. So Princess and Meghan.
And if they're so horrible, why do you want your kids to be part of that, right?
Well, I mean, if you want to be out of the royal family, how can your kids be a prince and a princess? You
exactly,
know, right?
Yeah.
I mean, And
if I didn't like my family or my in-laws, I don't know if I'd want my kids to be part of that structure that they're in. I mean, the royals are a little different. You know what I mean? It's just silly. Right, Shawn?
Absolutely right. Did I hear about maybe it was a South Park episode? It was kind of mocking the couple, for saying they didn't want anybody to be out and about. And they didn't want anybody to look at them. Yeah. And then when people stopped looking at them, they're like, "Why aren't you looking at us?"
Exactly, because that's how they roll.
Which I thought was pretty funny.
Yeah, they are the royal equivalent of a low cut blouse.
Hey, you ever heard of a thing called privacy?
So they're the geeks.
Oh, yeah. So Meghan and Harry, Prince and Princess, I guess. I don't know. I can't remember. But this much I do know. You are our Geeks of the Week.
See again.
There's an all-night party in room 7609. And you can dance together all night if you've got the time.
Welcome to room 7609, where we try and take new wave gems and polish them up. Or maybe we are mining them from that forgotten vein of great music that just never really saw someone hit it with their little spotlight on their helmet and said, oh my goodness, I'm going to extract this and bring it to the whole world. It's the Koh-i-Noor diamond of new wave music, and I'm going to introduce it to the world. Well, we appreciate your suggestions. You can always send them to mlsoulofdetroit@gmail.com. That's exactly what Julie did earlier this month, saying that Steve Mackey, the bass player for Pulp, died on March 2nd at 56. So she nominated Babies for an upcoming show. Here's that show. Here's that song. It's Pulp with Babies.
Well, it happened years ago when you lived on Stanhope Road. We listened to your sister when she came home from school, 'cause she was 2 years older and she had boys in her room. At least outside I heard her, alright. Well, that was alright for a while, but soon I wanted more. I wanted to see as well as hear, and so I hid inside her wardrobe, and she came home round 4, and she was with some kid called David, and from the garage up the road. I listened outside, I heard her, alright. Oh, I wanna take you home, I wanna give you children. You might be my girlfriend. Yeah, 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 yeah. When I saw you next day, I really couldn't tell, 'cause you might go and tell your mother. And so you went with me. Oh yeah, me was coming on, and I thought I heard you laughing when it's mom and dad were gone. I listened outside, I heard you, alright. Oh, I wanna take you home, I wanna give you children, and you might be my girlfriend. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, well, I guess it couldn't last too long. I came home one day and all the things were gone. I fell asleep inside, I never heard her come. Oh, I opened up the wardrobe and I had to get it on, yeah. Oh, listen, oh, we were on the bed when you came home. I heard you stop outside the door. I know you won't believe it's true. I went with her 'cause she looks like you, my God. Oh, I wanna take you home, I wanna give you children, you might be my girlfriend. Yeah, 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 yeah. Oh. Yeah, 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 yeah. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, 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 yeah. In fact. So that's Pulp. You know,
not new wave at all. That's more Britpop, right?
Well, yeah. I mean,
early '90s Britpop.
They formed during the new wave era, but they really didn't make many waves until they got into kind of the Britpop. I don't know if I would exactly consider that shoegazing. I know we kind of had a lot of interest in shoegazing back in January, more than I would have expected. But yeah, this is, you know, he doesn't exactly sound like James but I kind of have that sort of a little more poppy than the Stone Roses, but definitely that Manchester feel where it's, kind of sing-songy and, some weird little, I don't know what a keyboard or synthesizer, what that was at the beginning of the song, but it's got that jaunty little feel to it.
I like it, but I like Britpop, so.
Yeah, well, I mean, hey, it's the best thing the British have imported since
punk.
No, I was gonna say fish and chips, but I really don't like fish.
Harry.
But.
What? Who? Harry?
Harry.
Thanks, Shawn.
Yeah, but they exported Harry, but the problem is now
Nobody
we got
wants
him.
It. Yeah, nobody wants him.
If they'd sent him to Australia, like the British sent all the Irish and Scottish troublemakers, that would have been great. But now we're stuck with his Royal APW.
Exactly. Solid choice.
I couldn't hear the song, by the way.
What? Why not? What's wrong? Open your ears.
All I could hear was, yeah. It sounded like the lead singer from The National a little bit.
Oh, could be. I just wondered, and Shawn is dialing in from a undisclosed location, but not the safe house where Elliott Hall, who was our guest today, hid the witnesses to the Algiers Motel massacre. But I was wondering if, in keeping with tradition, Shawn, did you find a safe place to relieve yourself during room 7609?
Well, I did before I jumped on. How about that? Does that count?
I suppose it's just not the same. It's not the same than having you in here.
Yeah,
and running up the stairs and running a relative. Run's a relative term, of course.
Say, yeah.
Yeah, I'd say moving at faster than the normal rate in a northerly direction. Well, Shawn,
that's relative too.
We were talking about the Windsor Curse earlier, where you declare that a player or a team is rounding into shape and is poised for great success, and then they immediately fall off a cliff. I'm wondering if you feel that you owe Juwan Howard or Tom Izzo any sort of apologies or some sort of
getting my hopes up.
Yeah.
No, because the point of that column, if it's the column you were referring to, was that sometimes it's okay if you just get a little bit better during the season. I said nothing about a tournament run. I said their odds of making the tournament were slim, and that they'd just been playing better down the stretch, and then they obviously face planted against Rutgers in the second half. Jeez. Especially, but I didn't write anything about them getting on a run. I was just trying to put in context saying he didn't need to be on the hot seat. That was ridiculous.
Yeah, no. I just meant what you told me personally. Where you're like, they can beat Rutgers and they match them against Purdue. I'm like, no.
Yeah, they. I feel like, and it's funny because I talked to Phil Martelli off to the side a little bit after the game, the assistant coach to Juwan Howard, and he said that he felt like the last few weeks of game after game after game, which was essentially a tournament game, right?
Yeah.
Because they were playing to try to get in. It just kind of caught up to them, and they were tight. And the stage, they just didn't handle it well. You know, their youth caught up to them, and they look like it. I know some fans were upset, and let me just make this point real quickly. There are plenty of times, and I can't speak as much to other sports, but there are plenty of times in basketball in particular, maybe Mike can speak a little bit more to hockey, but where tightness and anxiety reads as lack of energy and focus.
Yeah.
And a lot of fans were complaining, you know, they weren't ready to play. They looked disinterested, discombobulated, disconnected, all that. And that may be true in terms of how they look, but that's not true in terms of what's inside them and why they're performing the way they are. They were just kind of overwhelmed by the moment a little bit, and
they turned the ball over.
And it freezes you, and then that slows you down. And you guys know how this works in any other facet of life. If you're anxious about something, it's hard to settle in and do whatever the task is at the normal sort of rate of speed. And I feel like that's what happens in basketball sometimes, and probably other sports too. But I don't know if you ever feel that in hockey, Mike.
You hear about people clutching their stick a little too tight and things like that. But I think one of the things in hockey is if you get caught flat-footed, you're going to get run over. Somebody's going to hit you.
Yeah, there's a lot of movement in basketball too, but it's not the same fluid. I mean, you start a lot more in basketball, and there's a lot more sets. You know, in hockey, you're not looking out over there for the coach to necessarily call up a set, maybe a power play or something. But So you're not thinking as much. It's much more reaction in a quicker time in the ice. And basketball's a fast sport, obviously, but you still have to think about certain fundamentals. And if you're not thinking clearly, you look like you're moving in molasses.
I'm just going to go with the Shawn Windsor Curse. I think that's a better way to explain it.
Yeah, I think.
Yeah. And as far as state, we'll see. I mean, they've got a bracket that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you guys have talked about that or not, but they've got a bracket where, I mean, USC is the kind of team that, I hate to say this because this means the opposite will happen, but it's the kind of team that Izzo's had success with in the past. They're athletic. They got some skill and some talent. They're not very organized offensively because they've got certain kind of skill and talent. They just run a lot of high ball screens. I don't want to geek out here too much, but they're good defensively. But it's the kind of team that he can take advantage of when he doesn't have his most talented team. I don't know if they will, but if they somehow get by USC, I think Marquette's really good as the 2 seed, and you would assume they'd be there. But I'm not sure they're Arizona.
I'm going to pull this audio, and if all that comes true, we'll never hear it again. But if you're way off of the mark, we'll replay it.
Yeah. So
for sure. I don't think they'll beat Marquette, so you can definitely put that on the tape.
Okay, good. Yeah, marking that as well.
If you're filling out your bracket, go with USC. Damn it.
Yeah, it's a tough game for him. But I'm just saying, in his past, when he's had runs that have come when you don't expect them, it usually starts with beating a team like USC.
All right. Sounds good.
Or it would have if you hadn't said that, but it's okay.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry about that, Mike. But are you planning on going to Columbus, Michael?
No, I will be teaching at noon when the Spartans take the field. So I'm wondering if I'll be the only one in the classroom. And then from East Lansing, I will be jumping in the Riv and headed straight to Detroit, where I will be at the Caju Cafe from at least 3 o'clock till 4:30, doing kind of a live version of the Soul of Detroit with the folks there, and then hanging out for some beers and, other kind of East Side hijinks that one might have on St. Patrick's Day. We're at a Belgian bar in a neighborhood named for the English. What could possibly go wrong?
So you're not jumping in the Riv as in the Red Cedar River, sort of taking your clothes off and getting a little cool bath. You're talking about your car, which you have nicknamed, which is interesting.
Well, I don't know that it's a nickname. It is a Riviera, so it's more of a derivative. But I'm not ruling out a polar dip in the Red Cedar River. But I will be cruising down 96 in the 1985 Buick Riviera, which actually does have a nickname, Duke Riviera. So I'll be riding.
Do you keep a case of oil in the trunk?
I'll be rolling in the Duke. Oh no, I have a fantastic mechanic. There's no need for that sort of thing. This car purrs, man. Dave has got this thing just rolling. So no, everything will be fine. And I will be. I also will not be stopping at the Riv in East Lansing, which was one of my favorite haunts when I was an undergrad. So no, I'll be taking the Buick to the east side and having a grand old time at the Caju Cafe. So please come out and join me and say hey, and we'll raise a glass. You buy the first one, and then I'll duck out before it's my turn. It's the Irish goodbye round style. Will you be there, Shawn, in Columbus?
I will be.
Okay.
Are you certain of that? You seemed a little hesitant.
Performing some Santeria to curse my team?
No. I had something I was trying to.
I know.
Can you talk amongst yourselves for about 30 seconds, please?
Sure.
Okay.
Well, let's jump into the next thing because we've teased it twice.
Oh yeah, no, and I'm sorry to interrupt Shawn's day with our show. That's not going to be a problem.
It's okay. Normally I would pounce on Windsor for doing this, but knowing that there's a situation and the fact that he's even with us at all is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and since he urinated into an ashtray, we should probably cut him some slack. So let me thank our lone donor this week. Rebecca sent us a very, very kind donation with a note that says, have a St. Patrick's Day cocktail on me. And it's enough for each of us to have a cocktail. So, nice. Rebecca, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And we did hear from some folks. Now, of course, you can donate to us by going to mlsoulofdetroit.com and hitting the donate button on the upper right-hand corner of our page. You can also support the show by letting our sponsors know that you know about them because of the show. And you can support the show by subscribing to our YouTube channel. It's Soul of Detroit. If you subscribe, like the show, hit the bell, you can get alerts whenever we go live, and that really does help us. We're closing in on 400 subscribers. Drew just recently discovered YouTube and came downstairs and said, hey, yeah, man, we were at like 600. Now we're at like 4,000. I said, oh, that's...
Your feelings were hurt.
I'm very happy for you. But we did have another donation, and that's why Drew came down here, because Marnie kindly delivered a basket of treats, including an awesome Altus beer sign. It looks like there's some chocolate I won't be able to touch until after Lent, and some other cool stuff in there. So thank you very much. There's all kinds of ways to support the show, and we appreciate all of them. And your feedback is a great way to let us know that you care.
So you don't want to talk about the column, okay?
Well, I thought we were going to talk about feedback and then get to the column before we...
I'm just messing with you. Yes, the feedback. And then we got feedback today that actually made me laugh literally out loud and for a long time. And it's, I think this is a review on the iTunes page, correct?
Yes, somebody gave us a 5-star review. We love it when you rate us on whatever platform you're listening to. They do accumulate, and we have 600 ratings now with an average of 4.7. So rate us, even if you hate us, give us 5 stars and then crap all over us. We'll consider that a good day's work.
So I hope Shawn's listening, because this one is mainly directed at him, and it's from Cibolaro. And what they say is Shawn is finally starting to act like it's not such a chore to be here and be on the show. So Shawn is finally realizing that, hey, this show's not so bad, and the one that I'm on, it's not so bad. It's not a chore.
Yeah, he warmed up after 160,
until today,
195 episodes, and of course he's being lauded for his participation, his presence, and his energy at a time when he's not here. He's silent and seems a little bit somnambulant.
Of all days, too. One day where he seems disinterested. But that's okay. That's our Shawn.
I even gave him a big word to pick on.
Yeah. So this column...
Oh, yeah. We're building up to the crescendo.
I don't know if Shawn's coming back, is my point.
Yeah, I think the thing is, when you dial into a podcast from a white van next to a park, sometimes people will tap on the window and they'll pull you out of it and they'll begin to hit you about the head and shoulders with sticks.
I was very intrigued regarding feedback. Yeah, Shawn just texted me, yes, yeah, we can't hear you. I don't know why we can't hear you, but we can hear you. I love it when there's personal text. I was surprised at the feedback you got on your column, which was about the state of the city and Mike Duggan's speech. And most of it, reading the feedback, I think they might have missed the main point of the column, because the people in the comment section seem to be defending the billionaires for, getting tax dollars, public dollars.
Right. And I will tell you...
Wasn't really your point.
No, but it's funny. I was at a neighborhood association meeting earlier this month, and the very first Chick-fil-A is coming to Cornerstone Village, which is the neighborhood right next to my neighborhood. It's going to be the first Chick-fil-A in Detroit. It's going to be the first drive-through only Chick-fil-A in Michigan. And it's going to create 50 jobs. It's going to take an abandoned piece of land, or at least an underdeveloped piece of land, a former car lot, and turn it into a dynamic business in the neighborhood. And I was thinking to myself, those guys received zero subsidy.
Mm-hmm.
They're just building it, and it's going to make a difference. And I started thinking, with these big billionaire projects, they always seem to want something from us, and now they've got this plan where...
Which I get. I mean, who wouldn't ask for everything you could get?
Sure, but I mean, if you're building a Chick-fil-A on the east side, that's kind of like turning straw into gold. If you can make businesses work in some of these remote neighborhoods, how the hell can you not make them work downtown? And then I started thinking...
A little smaller scale, but yeah.
Yeah, but and they own the land. What are they going to do with that land if we say, no, we're not going to give you all this money? I mean, there's a lot of reasons why this project could go forward on its own. But to your point, Mark, I listened to the mayor's State of the City, which again was a bravura performance. The guy works without notes. He's got graphics. It's amazing how he does it.
It's almost like he was a debate champion.
Yes, I think I may have read that in the Free Press. But the thing is, he's defending the billionaires. He's promoting this project. And what he didn't say that I think would actually help the project move forward more than anything else is, my fellow Detroiters, I will remain vigilant. I will bird dog these people. I will make sure that they fulfill their promises to us in return for $800 million in tax incentives. Now listen to that number.
Do what you're going to say. Do what you say you're going to do.
It's a $1.5 billion project. Half of that money is going to come from taxpayers. Yep. And if Duggan just said, you know me, I'm the data guy. People who work for me know that I am up their ass all the time, and I make no apologies for it. If he had just said, I'll be just as tough on the billionaires as I am on the people who work for me and for the city of Detroit, and the people who litter, and the people who paint graffiti, and the people who don't put their trash barrels in after trash pickup day, I think people would say, well, I'm all in then, because this is the one guy who holds everybody accountable. And instead, he sounded a lot like he was on the PR team.
One other interesting thing in your column is you mentioned how the day after the State of the City, he sends out an email for fundraising. How long has he been a mayor? Mayor of Detroit?
He's been the mayor since 2013, so this is his 10th year as mayor.
There's no term limits, correct?
He can be mayor for as long as the people will have him.
Do you think he's going to run for mayor again, or something else?
Well, there's a couple.
A lot of rumors floating around.
Yeah, there's a couple scenarios, and one that seems to be very popular is that the mayor's going to run for governor, and so yeah, he'll finish this term, focus for a year before the gubernatorial election on winning the Democratic nomination, and then hopefully be elected in November. That's his hope. But there's another school of thought that somebody mentioned to me is that, well, no, once you're no longer mayor, you don't have the clout, you don't have the power, you don't have the influence. So maybe he'll run for a 4th term as mayor and then run for governor while he's serving as mayor. I can see some logic to that. But if I were to make a bet, and I'm not a betting man, I would say Duggan finishes this term and runs for governor. And the other thing is, you see all kinds of politicians. Craig Mauger, when he was with the Michigan Campaign Finance Network, and when I was with Fox 2, we worked together on a story about retiring state senators who were raising tons of money, even though they were not going to run for office ever again. Now, in their case, they tended to spend some of that money on shit that they liked that was probably inappropriate. But every politician raises money, because they want to have that power, they want to have that influence, and they want to have that option to, well, if I change my mind, I'll have all that money in the bank.
Yeah. Wow. What was that, Shawn? You're back.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what happened there. I was just saying, it's another great story by Mike. Sorry, I had something come up, and I'm probably going to have to leave you guys here, but it's been a great show. And sounded like you had a great guest, and I really appreciate you making a little time for me.
We're always happy to accommodate you, Shawn.
Did you hear the feedback, Shawn, at least?
No, what was the feedback?
Shawn is finally starting to act like it's not such a chore to be there. That was the feedback.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, was that the feedback?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And now Shawn has to go.
Was it a chore today to be here?
No, it was. No, it was. I was happy to try to do it. It's a little tricky, but
I know.
Yeah, and I had to
there's shit going
blow off an institution that was rather important. That I'm wondering if that's what muted me, but who knows? Maybe Mike just wanted to mute me. I wouldn't blame him.
Oh
no! I want
cryptic.
I want more Windsor. I'm like the audience. I can't get enough Shawn.
I know, me neither.
And people feel deprived when we don't have a fully engaged Windsorian element. And contrary to the body of evidence, Shawn does go to great pains to join us.
I tell you what, give me about 60 seconds and I'll be back with you.
Well, we're going to wrap by then.
Yes.
No, you're not.
Try me. He just muted again.
Let's
wrap before he comes back.
Yeah, no, that's one of his old dating lines too. Give me 60 seconds and I'll make it worth
the room will
your
come
while.
back to me.
Yeah, but But no, so one thing with the raising money, and we were talking about Dennis Archer earlier in the show. Dennis Archer was expected to seek a third term and shocked everybody, including his deputy mayor, when he decided not to seek a third term. But he was raising money right up until the time he announced that he would not seek another term, and had a massive, massive fundraiser, raised, I think, like $2 million. And when he left office, he took all that money and created the Dennis Archer Foundation, which provides scholarships for kids to go to Wayne State University and maybe to Western. I'm not sure about that, but he's a Western alum. Go Broncos. So mayors have raised money right up until the end. And even if they didn't go into politics again, they've used it for worthwhile endeavors. Or in the case of Duggan, if he keeps that account going, he could use it to support other candidates or initiatives or do whatever he wants. So
we love money.
Yeah, and I do.
The whole show has been this riveting. I guess that's a good question.
Oh my God, that was way shorter than 60 seconds.
Was it?
That's the other thing about his dating.
You were hoping to get out before then.
No, someone said that. I don't know who.
Yeah, it was.
Oh, I thought it sounded like you, but that's okay.
Phil Martelli told us that when we saw him at the unemployment office.
Name dropping of an assistant coach.
Yeah.
Oh no, that's the guy at the sandwich shop. Is there basketball, Martelli?
I believe there is. Oh, okay. He used to be a pretty good head coach, and now he's kind of a.
Shawn just talked to him.
A Buddha, yeah. That's where you get some good information. Mike will tell you that. You don't always go to the top dog. You go to the people that kind of work around them and support them.
Absolutely. In fact, I think he had some of his best success as a head coach during a 6-game stretch in Ann Arbor, wasn't it?
He did. He had a pretty good run at St. Joe too, if I'm not mistaken.
But he may have the highest winning percentage of Michigan head coaches ever, right? Wasn't he like 5-1 or 4-2? I mean, he was.
I do have a question. Listening to that chuckling and that smirk that I can hear in your face. Do you take more pleasure out of Michigan struggling in basketball and football than Michigan State winning?
How does that work? You know that answer.
Absolutely not. Absolutely
Bullshit.
not. I want my guys to win.
True. I don't think that's true.
No. Not now. This is a distinction. When we win and they lose, there are a few better days than that for me. But if we lose and they lose, I'm not happy. If we lose and they win, I am miserable. So no. My guys first.
If you lose and they lose, then it takes the sting away a little bit, right? I mean, it mutes it a bit, softens it. A little neosporin, so to speak.
I would say it's more of a relief. But if Michigan State beat Michigan for the national championship every year, I'd be very happy for the success we both enjoyed up until the penultimate moment.
I don't know.
Which is another sign from Shawn's.
I really don't know if I believe that.
Oh, are you kidding? Michigan State beating Michigan for the national championship in any sport, including tiddlywinks? It doesn't get much better than that.
Where would you go from that? You know, where would you go? What would you do? Would you just stop the podcast, right? You'd sell your Riviera. Well, there would be no point to anything. I mean, that would be it, right?
I would dive naked, covered in hot sauce through the 7 rings of hell to watch that game. No problem.
It'll never happen. Don't worry.
No, nobody wants to see me naked, covered in hot sauce.
Exactly.
Yeah. What was the year where they were sort of on a collision course and they both got to the Elite 8? 2014, maybe they both got to the Elite 8.
Yeah.
And all I know is that the media in Detroit, but has to cover both of them as impartially as they can, was kind of feeling, oh my God, what's going to happen if this happens, right? Everything's going to stop. Time's going to stop.
Oh yeah,
they weren't that far away. They both lost tough, close games. I think Michigan to Kentucky at a buzzer beater, and State to Connecticut after leading by 12 in the second half.
Oh, don't tell me about that. And then Kevin Ali got drummed out of Connecticut the next year for all kinds. Just like Michigan got screwed. They got beat by Louisville, and then they found out what a scumbag Pitino was. I mean, now nobody should have been shocked by that, but both of those teams kind of got knocked out by what I'm going to call unrighteous opponents who did the wrong thing and advanced. That left a bad taste in my mouth. And I've said repeatedly on this show that John Beilein is my favorite non-Spartan coach in all of college sports, and Red Berenson would be right up there too.
It's always about the righteousness with you. By the way, can I just point this out
glad Sean's back.
Both of you. No. And I just want to point this out to both of you. That this is not how little this is a chore. I am driving, taking part of this podcast. I got family in the car that's being very quiet, so I can at least sound like a little bit of a professional. So this is how seriously I take this responsibility in my life.
Yeah, and if they make a sound, Papa will, discipline them.
Oh yeah, right. That would probably go over well, considering it's not my kids. But if that works for you,
is Belvin? Is Belvin there?
I'm not here to judge.
Can you put Belvin on? Are you going like 900 miles an hour down the road in a kimono?
In a Jaguar?
Yeah. No. Okay. Well.
No. Convertible. Candy apple red.
Well, it's good to hear from you, even for a short amount of time, Shawn.
Well, thanks for having me in. Are we wrapping this up?
Yes.
I think so. We look forward to joining you in person again next week, Shawn, and we hope you'll all join us either online, on YouTube, on Facebook, or just by downloading the episode at your favorite podcast platform, whatever the hell we call them. And until next week, it's time for Cyrus to take us out.
Can you dig that?
Can you dig it? Can you dig it? You're listening to Tommy Hanley in Itmar with Horace Percival, Sidney Keith, Fred Ewell, Dorothy Summers, Dino Galvani, Bill Stevens, Gene Capra, and Paula Green. A BBC Variety Orchestra conducted by Charles Shadwell. Script and lyrics by Ted Kavanaugh. Produced by Mark Verlauer.